The gentleman from New York yields back. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the remaining time.
There's
been a lot of talk about political games. Watch people parade up and down and make speeches under the guise of a unanimous consent. And I'm not sure how serious that is, and I'm not sure how much that complies with the rules of the House, but be that as it may. And you have folks on the other side that say they really believe that the District of Columbia ought to be able to spend its money, but yet they vote no on the authorization to do that. We're in the second day of a shutdown of the federal government. A lot of people are upset. I'm upset. I'm disappointed because it doesn't have to be this way. 3 separate occasions, this House sent to the Senate a continuing resolution, would have kept the government open, kept the government running 3 times. And yet 3 times the Democratic-controlled Senate said no. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then this House sent to the Senate a continuing resolution that also said, let's appoint a conference committee. That's a group of individuals from the House and a group of individuals from the Senate. They would sit down and they would try to resolve these differences, to try to keep the government open. Because how are you going to solve a problem unless you sit down, and that's what we call a conference committee, and then you try to move forward? But the Senate, once again, said no. Now, we all know that we have conference committees from time to time. The gentleman from New York and I, he's the ranking member of the Financial Services Subcommittee of Appropriations. We have jurisdiction over lots of different agencies, the IRS, the Department of the Treasury, the federal court system, the Supreme Court, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Communications Commission. And we drafted a spending bill this year, and I assume the Senate was working on their own spending bill somewhere, somehow, some way. And usually when it all ends up, there's a conference committee, and you try to work out your differences. For instance, we oversee the IRS, and members might remember the scandal that took place. And as we were appropriating money to the IRS, we found out that they had been singling out individuals and groups of individuals based on their political philosophy, and they'd intimidated them, they'd bullied them, they'd held them up, and we thought that was wrong. And so when we drafted our appropriations bill, we didn't give the IRS all the money they asked for. But the Senate might have done something different, and if that was the case, then we would come together and have a conference committee and we would talk about that. And that's all we're saying here. Why don't we sit down and have a conference committee about how we're going to fund the federal government? That's the way to get started. That's the way to figure out a final way. That's the way to stop this shutdown. Again, we don't have to be here. It's disappointing. I wish we could move ahead. But at least, let's pass this continuing resolution. Let's say to the District of Columbia, we've met our legal responsibility. We have appropriated their own local funds so they can move on with their lives. Let's don't punish the citizens of District of Columbia. Let's don't punish the people that work in the District of Columbia that try to keep the city open, keep it running, keep it safe, keep it clean. Let's pass this resolution and move ahead. With that, I urge the adoption of this resolution and yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back.